If you have a dog, you already know this moment almost without thinking about it. It's so ordinary, it barely registers anymore. You stand up from the couch, maybe just to grab a glass of water, maybe to check something quickly in the other room, maybe because you suddenly remembered something small and unimportant. There's no urgency to it, no plan, and before you've even fully straightened up, before your feet have completely settled under you, there it is, the soft sound of paws on the floor behind you. It isn't hurried, it isn't dramatic, there's no scrambling or excitement, just movement. Quiet, steady movement that mirrors yours. You walk down the hallway and your dog follows a few steps behind. You stop and they stop. You turn and they turn. Sometimes they sit when you pause. Sometimes they lie down. Sometimes they simply stand there, watching you, head slightly tilted, eyes calm and attentive, as if whatever you're doing must matter simply because you're the one doing it. Eventually, almost everyone says the same thing, usually with a laugh, sometimes with mild disbelief. Why do you follow me everywhere? It sounds like a joke, but it's a question that opens the door to something much deeper than habit, boredom, or curiosity. Because dogs don't follow us randomly, and they don't do it because they lack independence, confidence, or intelligence. They follow us because for tens of thousands of years, their survival, safety, and emotional world have been built around staying close to humans. Long before dogs were pets, before leashes and vet visits and beds tucked into corners of rooms, they were partners. Early canines that lingered near human camps weren't weak, they weren't desperate, they were observant. They noticed patterns. They learned that proximity meant warmth on cold nights. It meant scraps of food. It meant protection from larger predators. It meant shared vigilance, more eyes scanning the dark, more ears listening for danger. The dogs that stayed close lived longer. They raised more offspring. They passed those tendencies down, generation after generation, until following humans wasn't something dogs learned through training or conditioning. It became something they were born prepared to do. Dogs are deeply social animals. They evolved to live inside group structures where distance meant vulnerability and closeness meant safety. In that kind of world, wandering off alone wasn't independence, it was risk, it was exposure. So when your dog looks at you today, their brain doesn't register you as an owner or a resource. It registers you as their group, their family, their pack, and more specifically as what researchers call a secure base. A secure base is the emotional anchor an animal uses to decide whether the world is safe enough to explore. When that anchor is nearby, exploration feels possible. When it disappears, the environment subtly changes. Studies show that dogs are more confident, more curious, and more relaxed when their person is close. They investigate new objects more readily. They recover from stress more quickly. They're willing to move outward because they know they can return. So when you leave the room, even briefly, your dog's brain notices immediately. Not in a dramatic way, not as panic, but as recalibration. Something changed. The social landscape shifted. Where did my anchor go? Do I need to move too? Following you restores balance. It brings the world back into alignment, not because they're afraid, but because connection stabilizes their internal sense of safety. Inside their brain, powerful chemistry reinforces this behavior. Oxytocin increases during shared space, touch, and eye contact. Dopamine reinforces the feeling that proximity is rewarding and meaningful. On a neurological level, staying near you simply feels right. That's why most dogs don't follow with tension. They follow with loose posture, relaxed movement, soft eyes. The body language says everything. I'm here. Nothing is wrong. Dogs are also extraordinary observers. They evolved to watch movement and monitor patterns. In the wild, knowing who was moving, where, and why could mean the difference between safety and danger. That instinct didn't vanish when dogs entered human homes. It adapted. So when you stand up, your dog isn't just reacting to motion, they're gathering information. Are routines changing? Is energy shifting? Is something about to happen? Dogs don't think in terms of tasks, they think in terms of transitions. Standing up is a transition. Leaving a room is a transition. Dogs pay attention to transitions because transitions are where uncertainty lives. They're also remarkably sensitive to human emotion. They notice changes in posture, breathing, facial expression, and even scent. Stress alters body chemistry. Dogs can smell it. You don't have to say a word. They know when something feels off. Following you is one way they check in, one way they stay attuned. There's also routine. They live inside it. They learn the rhythm of a household with astonishing accuracy. Standing up often leads to food, walks, play, or at least a shift in energy. In a dog's world, change is information worth tracking, not because they expect a reward every time, but because presence keeps them aligned with what's happening around them. This behavior is often strongest in dogs with secure attachment. Securely attached dogs aren't clingy, they're confident. They follow because they trust the bond, not because they fear losing it. That's why many dogs will follow you into a room, circle once, lie down, and immediately relax. Sometimes they fall asleep within seconds. They didn't need anything, they just needed to be where you were. There's another quiet process happening beneath all of this, something scientists call co-regulation. It's the way two nervous systems influence each other without words. Your dog's presence can lower your stress hormones, slow your breathing, and soften your mood. Your calm presence does the same for them. When your dog follows you, part of that movement is an unconscious synchronization, a shared emotional pacing. This is why dogs often become more alert when you're anxious and more relaxed when you're calm. They're not just watching you, they're tuning themselves to you. Sometimes, following also carries a layer of protection. Many dogs naturally position themselves in doorways, hallways, or between their human and unfamiliar sounds, not because they expect danger, but because their instincts tell them to monitor transitions. Thresholds matter, changes matter. That instinct often becomes stronger at night or in unfamiliar environments, where proximity equals readiness and readiness equals safety. Over time, this simple behavior becomes layered with personality. Some dogs follow quietly like polite shadows. Some dogs follow with dramatic sighs and exaggerated flops, making sure you notice the effort they've made to accompany you. Some dogs follow with intense eye contact, as if supervising every decision. But underneath all of it, the motivation stays the same: connection. It's also important to notice when dogs don't follow. Even the dogs that trail their people faithfully will sometimes stay behind. They might lift their head, watch you leave, and then settle back down. That detail matters. It shows this behavior isn't compulsive, it's selective. Dogs aren't glued to us out of fear, they're tracking relevance. Dogs are constantly reading energy. A calm trip to the kitchen doesn't require urgency. A sudden shift in posture might. They're not counting steps, they're reading meaning, and meaning lives in movement. This sensitivity is one reason dogs often seem to know when something is wrong before we do, when we pace without realizing it, when we move differently because something heavy is on our mind. Dogs notice these changes. They respond by closing distance, because closeness is how dogs respond to uncertainty. And this influence goes both ways. Over time, people begin to move differently too. Many dog owners slow their pace without realizing why. They pause longer. They become aware of another body in the room. Living with a dog subtly changes how you occupy space. Movement stops being purely individual. It becomes shared. There's something grounding about being followed without expectation. Your dog isn't tracking you because they want you to perform. They aren't evaluating productivity. They're not asking you to be interesting. They're responding to your existence. You stood up, so they stood up. You moved, so they moved. Dogs also don't follow us equally across all stages of life. Puppies follow constantly because everything is new. Adolescents wander more, testing independence. Older dogs often return to closeness, not out of fear, but out of preference. As their bodies slow, shared space becomes more valuable. And then there are the moments when following becomes almost ceremonial, when a dog rises slowly, joints stiff, just to relocate themselves to whatever room you've entered, not because the floor is better, not because the temperature changed, simply because you're there now. Dogs also understand absence more deeply than we often realize. When you leave the house, the environment doesn't just lose a person, it loses a regulating presence. Dogs adapt by conserving energy, monitoring sound, and waiting. When you return, following often increases for a while, not because they fear you'll disappear again, but because proximity helps reset the emotional baseline. This is why dogs shadow more closely after change, a move, a loss, a new routine. They don't understand the details, but they feel the instability. Following becomes a way of stitching the day back together. Dogs also don't experience space the way humans do. Humans think in rooms and tasks. Dogs think in zones of relevance. A hallway is a transition. A doorway is information.